Focus. Ideate. Innovate. Enable. ICSI presents Company Secretaries, Enhancing Governance, Empowering Corporates, in association with CNBC-TV18.
Hello and a very warm welcome to our special presentation, ICSI presents Company Secretaries, Enhancing Governance, Empowering Corporates. I'm Mugdha Kalra. The role of a company secretary has evolved many-fold in recent times. When we talk about corporate governance of a company, compliance is one of the most important parts. And the process of compliance in a global setup, in a global economy, not just requires mastery over laws and acts, but also a keen eye on best practices, ethics, a sharp foresight, and understanding of not just the books, but perhaps people also. No wonder good company secretaries are the most sought-for professionals. But what does it take to be a good one? And how has this role evolved over a period of time? Well, joining me to deliberate more on the subject, CS Devendra V. Deshpande, President ICSI, Mr. Subhash Gejas Selvaraj, Senior Vice President India, Group Finance HR and IT, Nippon Paint India, and Sudhir C, VP and Global Head, Risk Compliance, Microland Limited. Welcome, gentlemen. Welcome to the show. Well, the first few thoughts that come to my mind are about the three very important aspects of company secretaryship, which are compliance, governance, and ethics. And when we talk about all of them, they may sound similar, but they're not, right? Mr. Deshpande, in that context, let's first start with corporate governance. What is corporate governance and how does a company secretary come to bring it all together?
Yes. So basically corporate governance is something which is beyond law. So law requires you to do certain things, the regulations ask you to do certain things, but over and above law, you have to do certain things for making your company a sustainable one. So if you talk about sustainability today, it has got three prospects. One is environment, other is social, and third is governance. So governance is like accountability of the company or a corporate towards all the stakeholders. So if we count the stakeholders, there might be 10 different kinds of stakeholders, including vendors, customers, the shareholders, employees, society, so many government, so many stakeholders. Towards that, you are accountable. So what kind of accountability you are working towards, that actually subscribes what is governance in the company. It also talks about transparency. So how transparent you are in disclosures. So sometimes law may tell you to disclose 4 things, but if you are disclosing 9 things, just to create that transparency and informing what are the risks, what are the issues with the company, what are positives, negatives about the company, then that company is called as well-governed company. And I can tell you that compliance is a cost, but governance is a value. So governance actually creates a value of any corporate. So these are few things which, these are the initial thoughts about governance, and company secretaries are the torchbearers, leaders, or they are the safekeepers of governance. Our profession is
not an easy job.
pretty difficult.
Mr. Selvaraj, being compliant is a necessity. Being ethical is a choice, and as I said, governance is a different ballgame altogether. How does it pan out in day-to-day functioning when we talk about ethics? Your views?
Right. So ethics basically, means doing the right thing. So in terms of business, right? So in ethics, I think it can come how we add value to our customers. So in terms of rendering services or products, so are we, adding value to our customers? And how good we, support our employees, invest in the employees and growing the employees, and our products, our manufacturing process, how it protect the environment, and how also we add value to the shareholders and other stakeholders and create a positive impact to the overall community. So in my perspective, ethics is never a choice. So it is every business house and every leaders across the organization shall practice good business ethics.
My first question to you, Mr. Sudhir, is leading from the previous questions, which is how do you see the three pillars together of compliance, governance, and ethics?
With this changing regulatory environment and enhanced stakeholder expectations, compliance, governance, and ethics is not just good to have. It is a must for an organization to achieve its strategic objectives. Good corporate governance is all about transparency, accountability, integrity, and it's necessary to have the right management information and organizational controls to achieve it. Compliance, a lot of people think, is just about regulatory compliance, but it goes well beyond that. It's about conformance to a set of requirements, and those could be laws, regulations, policies, contracts, even strategies. A good compliance management system, is an integral part of your risk management framework and helps mitigate a lot of compliance risks. Ethics is about doing the right thing every single time. It is the application of ethical principles and methods to business, which is about business ethics. Promotion of a culture of ethics is an imperative, and it increasingly is being realized as a bedrock of good corporate governance. And it is ultimately it instills the confidence of the stakeholder in the company. When it comes to governance, compliance, ethics, the tone has to be set right at the top, and it should percolate down till it's embedded into the DNA of the organization and becomes a way of life.
How does ICSI bring knowledge and functional knowledge of all of this together, Mr. Deshpande? When we talk about the curriculum, when we talk about the best practices, what is the role ICSI at the moment which is going beyond that certification?
Yes.
And how do you support this army of company secretaries, which is already finding itself in a very complex environment?
Yes. So, Institute of Company Secretaries of India has been doing a lot over corporate governance. In 2001, when this concept was pretty new, we started awards for the different corporates. And now we have expanded those awards to different categories also. So, this is kind of a motivation to the corporates to come in and showcase what governance they are doing, what corporate governance they are doing. We have come out with one a standard, you can call it as standard, best practices in corporate governance. So there are mandatory governance principles and mandatory governance requirements, plus over and above few companies do a voluntary governance standards. They follow voluntary governance standards. So we as institute give the awards to those people. Even for private limited, small emerging companies, we also give awards. So now the new concept which has come, business sustainability and responsibility reporting. So every company has to give that report if you are a top 1,000 listed company. But we are now started award in that. So awarding a best report for mandatory and for voluntary also. So these things we are doing in general. But when we talk about curriculum, every 5 years we are changing the curriculum. Now this year, I'm really happy to tell you that we have completely changed our syllabus, and there are around 6,000 different comments from general public which came. We considered all comments. Twice it was put before the general public, and we have come out with a different syllabus to include all perspectives of corporate governance. Not only corporate governance, but also other
ESG now
things.
being,
Yes, like
such a big
ESG and risk management has been made a separate 100 marks paper. So that really shows the institute's vision towards making our students equipped with corporate governance principles. And we also have different meetings with different institutes in company secretary or governance professionals outside India also, and we understand what are the best practices there, and we are trying to set out a particular document wherein we can find out which can be imported, which can be exported. So all these things we are doing as an institute, and to make global governance also in a particular level.
Mr. Selvaraj, how does a company secretary calculate risk? What are the challenges according to you?
On a regular basis, right? So every business house faces plenty of risks, like in terms of the regulatory risk, the technology risk, the business risk, There could be, the potential litigation kind of risk. So the company secretary keeps a tight watch over all these aspects, and then also classify the risks into two wider baskets, like the systematic risks which we can't control, so which are the uncontrollable risks. We try to avoid it, or try to build certain plan how we mitigate those risks. And in terms of controllable risks, or which are non-systematic, so in such case, like we do that, okay, we can build in certain checks and balances such that we operate within certain level of the risk which is manageable for us. And also when we manage the risk, so we shall not lose sight. If we don't take certain risks, then there is no reward. So we need to have a proper balance, and the regular way to do it is to have the proper risk matrix, and then monitor it regularly and take action then and there without further delays. The instant advice to the management, instant advice to the board of directors, and taking key decisions and corrective measures timely would help organizations to manage their risks in a much better and efficient manner.
When we talk about compliance and when we talk about compliance management, there are so many things that have now come under the big umbrella of compliance, especially ESG when we were talking about that. How difficult is it now following all the compliances, and what is the process like?
Yeah. So in most of the business houses, there is a set process of compliance management. So it is about identification of laws applicable to the company, and then what are the compliances under those particular laws. Even as secretarial auditors, company secretaries in practice, they will have to certify that there is a system which is there in the company to see that compliances of general laws have been followed, and specifically applicable laws. If company is into a particular sector and a particular law is applicable to them, they will have to certify each and every compliance, whether it has been done or not. And Companies Act and FEMA and SEBI, the laws, these are the few laws which are like our forte. So we can bifurcate into these three parts, and compliance management is something which company secretaries look forward for. So it is like one person to contact when it comes to compliances of all applicable laws.
Right.
Maybe it has been it will be handled by a legal head, but before it goes to board, it goes through a company secretary. So that is a route which is usually followed in big business houses. So we are the repositories of all this information, and we give report that these are the few things which are not complied with. So it's a robust system which gets generated in a company because of secretarial audit, because of company secretary being there appointed as key managerial personnel, and he is also officer in default. So he will take care of all the compliances.
Right. Right. Noted. Well, let me stop here for a quick break. But when we come back, we shall carry this thread forward and get a perspective on the laws governing compliance and corporate governance. So see you shortly.
ICSI presents Company Secretaries, Enhancing Governance, Empowering Corporates, in association with CNBC-TV18. ICSI presents Company Secretaries, Enhancing Governance, Empowering Corporates, in association with CNBC-TV18.
Welcome back to our special presentation. ICSI presents Company Secretaries, Enhancing Governance, Empowering Corporates. Let's talk about the laws. And let's start with securities law. So when we talk about all of the laws, and securities law is one of the most important, what are the challenges in compliance? What kind of a mental makeup does a company secretary need when we are talking about securities law, because they work completely differently?
Yes. So every listed company, may it be listed on any of the recognized stock exchange, are required to follow two laws. One is Companies Act, and another one is SEBI laws. So SEBI laws actually govern the corporate governance. The basic concept of corporate governance was brought in by SEBI, Securities Exchange Board of India, and all these security laws relate to stakeholders protection, and it relates to reporting and transparency. So I think the entire SEBI laws look forward towards more transparent company, more reporting, more disclosures, timely disclosures. There should not be things which have been done today which might affect the prices of those shares and has been disclosed after, say, maybe 3 days.
Right.
So after every board meeting, every company secretary has to report the compliance or the decision taken within 30 minutes. So that is how we have to work, and it is very, very dynamic field. SEBI has been proactive in making changes in different laws to make it in line with global standards. Like, I can give you one example, the related party transactions now, certain related party transactions have to be approved by independent directors who are present in audit committee. So something which is beyond a
Right.
thought process of a normal director or a company or organization. Even globally, when we discussed this, they were amazed to see such changes being made in SEBI laws, security laws. And again, it is a forte of company secretary, because as per SEBI laws also, company secretary is a compliance officer. So that gives us a good recognition, and that really helps us to be the torchbearer in SEBI laws also.
Interesting. Mr. Selvaraj, your views. What are securities in investment law, and what are the major security laws in India, and do you think are they agile enough?
Right. So when we classify securities, I think it's quite complex in terms of the security laws, because these laws govern the equity, the stocks, the bonds, the futures and options, mutual funds. So where a lot of retail investors and institutional investors who are investing their capital and who are expecting protection for their capital and also aiming for a growth. So there comes the primary responsibility of the government to come with suitable laws which can protect the investors. So from that perspective, right now we have three major laws in India. That is the Securities Contract Regulation Act 1956, then Securities and Exchange Board of India SEBI Act 1992, and Depositories Act 1996. And so these acts are today, along with the SEBI listing guidelines, I think they are providing a good support and confidence to the investors into the Indian securities market. And predominantly, we can see a lot of investors, and mostly the retail investors, are coming into the securities market. So that shows the trust people have built into the securities law and the system what we have in our country as of now.
Well, what have you seen in your line of work, Mr. Sudhir? What are some of the major compliance challenges, and how do company secretaries navigate their way through them?
In my experience so far, I've seen quite a few challenges to an effective compliance management system, and some of the important ones are, in-house availability of expertise. In today's global environment, an organization has to comply with laws across geos, from central and federal laws to state laws. The numbers can be mind-boggling, and organizations typically lack the breadth and depth of expertise to effectively manage these compliances. The second challenge is about having an accurate list of those applicable acts and compliances, and also about the continuous changes that happen to them. In India alone, you could face close to some 2,000 changes in a single year. And how do you track these and comply with them, proactively? Unfortunately, there are no automatic notifications for these. Right? And the third challenge which I've seen is around, being very manual intensive. It is in most places, it is ad hoc, it's paper-based, people-dependent compliance. And this is very challenging, especially when you have to go back and report, or and there could be misses in compliance because of this. So what I have seen work to address these challenges is, one, to have reliable partners who know the laws of the land in those various geos, who can provide you with the inventory of those requirements. The second is to digitize all of this, to have a tool to manage, monitor, track. And when you do this, I've seen that you can have an effective compliance program, and it goes a long way in building trust and assurance amongst all the stakeholders, whether it's employees, the board, the regulators, etc.
As we are heading towards conclusion, I wanted to bring two very important aspects. One is the mental makeup, and the other is due diligence. Due diligence, transparency. When we talk about the two, the due diligence bit and the transparency bit, these are virtues. And what kind of a mental makeup, therefore, a company secretary needs to survive, thrive, make good decisions, make ethical decisions? Is there a separate curriculum which also talks about how you need to handle people, and what should your mental aptitude be for such a complicated job?
No, not really. It's very difficult when we talk about aptitude and building up of an aptitude. I think the curriculum itself has a variety of subjects which makes us, and there is a strict code of conduct. So these two things actually make our professionals strict about compliances and governance. So many of the times company secretary put his foot very strong and says that, okay, this cannot be done because this is not allowed as per this particular law. Or sometimes he will give a proper solution that this is not allowed, but this is allowed, and then we are the solution providers. So it is a mental makeup. If you just say and go to the board and say, okay, you cannot do this, you cannot do that, you cannot, then it will be a losing game even for a company secretary.
Right.
But when company secretary will think about solutions, providing solutions within the ambit of law, then definitely our profession will grow a very, very big way. I think we have now changed our curriculum and exam pattern to include multidisciplinary case studies. So that will increase.
That's the best way of learning.
So, and there are also open book exams. So you have books, you will have to give the solution to the client. And that is how we are
much like law.
Much like law. So we are trying to build our professionals to be strong enough to put their foot forward, as well as to help the corporates to grow. It should not be seen as company secretary restricting the growth of a corporate. We are there to have a sustainable growth of companies rather than a short-term growth.
Well, thank you so much, gentlemen, for taking out time and talking to us and offering those wonderful insights on the subject. And thank you, audience, for staying with us on our special presentation, ICSI Presents Company Secretaries Enhancing Governance, Empowering Corporates.
ICSI presents Company Secretaries, Enhancing Governance, Empowering Corporates, in association with CNBC-TV18. Focus, ideate, innovate, enable.